Well, good morning. Good to have you all here today. Y'all are a good-looking crowd. Turn around. Let's look at each other. I know you're not supposed to do that in church. Go ahead, look around. Y'all are good-looking. It's good to be here this morning. My name's Jerry. I'm one of the elders here at Northridge, and it's so good to have you here this morning. So good to be here. In the past few weeks, we've been in the middle of our slow and sacred summer series, and we're about halfway through that, I think. We started out with looking at, and this whole series being about the practices, and some people call them spiritual disciplines, that help us to mature, help us to grow as followers of Jesus. And we've looked at several, and all of these practices are meant to help us to do three things that we've talked about before, about being with Jesus and how we do that, being like Jesus, becoming like Jesus, and then lastly, doing the things that Jesus did. So we're looking at that, looking at the ways that those things happen. The first week of our series, Pastor Dean talked just sort of an overview of what it means to be a disciple of Jesus and doing the things we just talked about. And then the second week, Jordan spoke about prayer and the ways to engage with God, how to pray, how to install that in your life, and how to get it plugged in and be praying and the need for prayer. And then last week, Pastor Dean spoke about the Sabbath and how important it is for us to rest and practice the Sabbath and have a day where we just unplug and we pull away and try to spend our time with the Lord. One thing that stuck with me through all of that, though, that just kind of was new to me, was that the fact that these practices are not check boxes. They're not something that we're putting on our to-do list or something that should feel burdensome to us, but it's really something that's for our benefit. That really sunk home and hit with me, that it's not meant to be some chore that even if you want to make it a spiritual chore, it's not meant to be something that we have to do, but it's something we get to do. It's something that is meant to renew us and give us life and to give us strength. That's what God's plan is for us, is to give us life and to give it to us abundantly. And these are some of the ways that God accomplishes that in our life. The practice we're going to look at today is no different. And that is the practice of silence and solitude. Silence and solitude. Now, I could probably pull out a timer and say, we're going to be still for 5 minutes. Ready, go. And we would freak out. I mean, we would be, it's hard enough to be silent for like 30 seconds or a minute sometimes. But to do it for any extended amount of time, how many of your minds just start reeling and going off down some trail, some rabbit trail? It's a hard thing to do sometimes. And I don't need to tell you how busy life is, how crazy life can be. It can come at you from any direction. Sometimes you think, oh man, everything's good, everything's solid, and bam, something comes out of the blind and gets you. Those pressures come in all kinds of different sizes and shapes. But one thing that's true for all of us, I bet you if I went around the room and said, hey, tell me, how's your life? What's going on in your life? How you doing? Most of us would use one word to describe our lives. What is that? Busy, yeah. And it's almost a given. You know, it's like when you say to people, hey, how you doing? Everybody says, fine. The second word is busy. All of us are busy. And it doesn't matter if you're working or not working, even people who are retired. Where are my retired people? Yeah, are you busy? Yeah, even busier sometimes when you've retired. It cranks it up to a whole nother level. Right here, I got a Doug on the front row. He's retired. He's busier than he's ever been. So it doesn't really matter. Even the retired people can stay busy. And in today's world, there are so many distractions, so many more than probably even used to be. But what I found is that this is not a new problem. I go back and I was doing some reading, and I found a quote from Jim Elliot. If you don't know who Jim Elliot is, he was a missionary who was martyred for his faith. by the people that he was trying to serve. He had a quote that said, "I think the devil has made it his business to monopolize on these elements, these three elements: noise, hurry, and crowds. Satan is quite aware of the power of silence." And what that really brought to my attention and reminded me is we have a spiritual adversary. We have we fight not just against flesh and blood, which is hard enough, but against spiritual forces that are pulling us and distracting us and trying to keep us from the very things that would grow us and make us stronger as disciples of Jesus. The other thing that jumped out at me was that quote by Jim Elliot was in 1955, a while back. What some of the young people say, the 1900s. Hey, I was born in the 1900s, so don't be knocking the 1900s. Theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote this. He said, "We are so afraid of the silence that we chase ourselves from one event to the next in order not to have to spend a moment alone with ourselves, in order not to have to look at ourselves in the mirror." That was in 1940. So this busyness, this distraction, this pulling us away and pulling us in various directions at one time isn't a new thing. How it happens now is very different. Cell phones, tablets, smartwatches. Sometimes now it's hard to get away from it. It's just hard to remove yourselves, to unplug, to get away. I remember the days when there were no cell phones. You got in your car, you went someplace, whatever happened, happened. You found out when you got back home. And that was life. Now, it's every second somebody's going to call you and find out and track you and do all kinds of things like that too. So it's very, very different these days. But I do believe that Jim Elliot was right, that when he said that we have spiritual forces pulling against us to pull us back and distract us, because Satan is the master of distraction. He likes to get us, anything, even things that are good, can distract us sometimes from what's best. And that's that spiritual struggle that goes on in our lives. I remember when the first time I heard Pastor Dean talking about silence and solitude, it was years ago. I remember thinking, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put on my big boy pants. I'm going to get up early in the morning, and I'm going to do it. Morning and me are not friends. I get up when I have to get up, get to work, and do all those sort of things. But I'm a night person. Pastor Dino, he talks about how he gets up sometimes at 4 a.m. That's about the time I'm going to bed. It's about 4 a.m. So it's just a whole different world for me. So I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get up early. I'm going to silence everything. I put the dogs away so they couldn't come in and distract me. I took my cell phone. I left it over here in the bedroom so it wouldn't distract me. I even took my smartwatch off, said, okay, because sometimes it'll ring. Put it over there. I'm not going to do this. And I get in the bonus room, sit down on the sofa, and I say, I'm just going to shut my eyes, and this is going to be great. I'm going to be silent. And then out of nowhere, I hear tick, 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 tick. I never knew that clock ticked. But it was so loud. It sounded like Big Ben in my ears. So I had to actually get up, take it off the wall, and put it in another room. It was so distracting to me. So I've evolved since then. I've learned that it's not necessarily about everything being quiet around me, but it's about me being quiet. It's about me being silent before the Lord and being able to spend that time with Him and opening myself up. It's a struggle sometimes to be silent, but yet it's a spiritual practice that Jesus modeled for us. And so we're going to look at some of those things, some of the ways He modeled that for us today. And all of these things that we've talked about prayer, we've talked about Sabbath and rest, and then the one today. I just want to assure you, these things are attainable. Even in the busiest person in this room, it's attainable. And sometimes when we think about spiritual practices, we think, I have to carve out hours to do this. And let me assure you, as we talk about this today, that's not the case. we'll get more into that as we get forward. So this morning we're going to look at just a few examples of how Jesus modeled this for us in his life, and then we're also going to look at ways we can put this into practice in our life. And that's going to be our morning and in 24 minutes. So and I'll get you out early too, I promise. Just a couple minutes early. So you can find examples really of silence and solitude in numerous places in the Bible. You've got Elijah, David, Moses used to get away with the Lord. He spent 40 days on the mountaintop just waiting on God to show up in a thick cloud, and then finally God shows up. So, I mean, there's all kinds of examples throughout the Bible, and our greatest example is Jesus. He's our rabbi. He's our teacher. So we want to learn from what he did, how did he do it, and what did he do, and look at those examples. So if you got your Bibles, you can look at Matthew chapter 14. This is the first one. This is where Jesus is feeding the 5,000. So he's got this huge crowd out in the middle of nowhere. So he's all the way like in Seagrove. And there's just nothing. There's no grocery store. There's nothing. So he's got them out there, and he tells the disciples, feed them. And, of course, they freak out. They're like, we got 5 loaves and 2 fishes. We can't feed 5,000. There was 5,000 men, by the way. There was probably double that. Probably closer to 10,000 when we count the women and the children. So he's out there, and he says, feed them. So he feeds it. They give it to the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He gives them to the disciples. The disciples turn and give them to the crowd. And he just kept going and going and going until everybody had everything they wanted to eat and some left over. So then verse 22, it says, immediately after that, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. How he dismissed them, we don't know. How he got rid of 5 to 10,000 people. If it was like we do, it's like, see you next week. We don't know how he did that. But he said, he dismissed them. And after he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. When evening came, it says, he was there alone. So the end of a long day, the end of a long, hard day, Jesus had to get away. He needed to get away. And you got to think, he was alone on that mountainside, praying, getting together with the Father. There were so many people who wanted a piece of Jesus. They wanted to touch him. They wanted him to heal them, to heal their family, to heal their bodies, and even in this case, to feed them. We just got a free meal out of this. So he needed space to get away from people. You ever been there? You just got to get away from people sometimes. I just need my space to get by myself, to clear my head, to think about it. But he wanted to spend time, not just to get away, but to spend time with his Father, to spend time praying and letting God pour into him and rejuvenate and fill his life and get him back to the full. And I remember when I was younger, I was a brand new clinician, and we used to do therapy. Back in that day, it was just back to back to back to back to back all day long, 7 hours of seeing people one after the other. You do that now, some, don't you? Cindy remembers. And so I remember coming home at the end of the day. We were newlyweds. Me and Nancy were newlyweds. I'd come home, and I was just a lump of clay. I had used all my words, and I was tired. So I would come in, and Nancy's like, hey, she's ready. Let's talk about the day. And I'm like, I just want to stare at the wall. I don't want to talk. I don't want to be around anybody. So we figured all that out. How do you get through all that? But I can imagine with Jesus, at the end of a long day of all of those demands and all the ways people pulled on him from all directions, of just being exhausted. Because he was God and what? Man. He was God and man. So he got exhausted just like we get exhausted. He got tired just like we get tired. So he was tired. So he was spending time with his Father, getting away and spending that time in the evening. Then also in Mark 1:35 through 37, another example, Jesus has just spent a whole day healing people. He had healed many, many people, the Bible talked about, in Mark 1:35 through 37. And it said the next morning, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place. where he prayed. Simon and his companions, so they wake up and they went to look for him. And when they found him, they said, Jesus, what are you doing here? Everyone is looking for you. They want you. The crowds are here. They're big, and they're asking for you. They're looking for you. Where are you? Have you ever had a time in your life where you were, and maybe if you've ever babysat or you had a child and you went to look for them and they weren't where you thought they should be, or they weren't there, and that panic that happens? I sort of read that into this with Simon and the disciples, that they were just panicked. He's gone. We went to his tent. He's gone. We don't know where to go. So they kind of split up and go looking for him. So they find him. And he says, listen, if you go on in this passage, it says, after he says, everyone's looking for you, he's like, yeah, let's go over this way. Let's go to a different town and minister over there. I like that idea that everyone's looking for him. He's tired, he's worn down, and he's got to spend time to renew and refill. There's a scene. Has anybody seen The Chosen? Anybody watched The Chosen? In one of the episodes, and I can't remember which one it was, but it depicts this pretty well. You hear out Jesus is ministering and ministering and ministering, and it's nighttime, and he comes staggering into the camp and just collapses into his tent. He's exhausted from ministering to people. He's drained from ministering all day. Has anybody here ever been drained and exhausted? Yeah. Yeah, because you're human, and we're human, and he felt the things that we felt. So let me ask you, how do you refill? What do you do when you're empty, you're drained, you're exhausted? What do you do to refill? What do you do to rejuvenate? Now, I could go around and ask people, and you could probably tell me some things, and I know there's all kinds of self-help books about doing stuff like this, self-care and things like that. And some of that stuff is good, but our example is Jesus. What did Jesus do? And what did Jesus model for us to renew? And the way he did it was to spend time alone, silence, and solitude with his Father. To spend time praying and listening. Look at Luke 5:15 and 16. In this passage, Jesus he's traveling along, and there is a fellow that comes along with leprosy. And the Bible says he doesn't have just like a little leprosy. The word actually says he is full of leprosy. I'm picturing he is leprous from head to toe, just eaten up with it. And he comes up to Jesus and says, if you will, you can heal me. And Jesus said, I will. And he touched him, and boom, immediately he was healed head to toe. And Jesus said, listen, don't tell anybody. Just go on and talk to your pastor, show him that you're better, offer the sacrifices, and go on your way. Well, that didn't work out well. Because the man went, and it said in verse 15, but despite Jesus' instructions, the report of his power spread even faster, and vast crowds, don't miss that, vast crowds came to hear him preach and to be healed of their diseases. What's the next verse say? But Jesus often withdrew to the wilderness for prayer. He did what was very different than a lot of times we would do. If we had vast crowds coming, if we had vast crowds following a pastor or a preacher, we'd be starting other churches. We'd be doing multiple services. Jesus said, there's vast crowds coming. Let me get alone. Let me go over here because I need space. I need to be able to spend time and quality time with my Father. And so that's what he did. This is what Jesus did to refill. He pulled away and found time for silence and solitude and prayer. So here's the point. The point is, if Jesus regularly sought times of silence and solitude and believed he needed that to connect with the Father, how much more do we need it? We can try to do it on our own strength. We can try to do it with other things. And we need to spend time with the Father. We need to spend time pulled away in silence and in solitude to become more like Jesus, to draw near to Jesus, to find that time. And remember, this is for our benefit. This is for our refilling. This is for our strength. It's something we get to do. It helps us connect with Jesus and gain that strength to face whatever comes our way. Because we know life is full of all kinds of issues, all kinds of struggles, all kinds of pressures. And if you're not in anything right now, hold on, because another one's coming. It's like the ocean. Waves come and waves come and waves come. And that's just part of life. So we know we've got to do this. We know it's part of our spiritual disciplines, part of the spiritual practices that help us grow as Christians. So the question then is, how in the world do I find time in my busy schedule to make this work? How do I connect and put this into my schedule so that I can successfully establish this practice in my life? Now, as I'm talking about this, I know I can hear some of your thoughts. And some of your thoughts are, listen, I get up in the morning and my feet hit the floor. I am busy from that moment till the time I go to bed at night. There is no time. Especially if you've got kids or you're working multiple jobs, it's like something after this, after this, after this. I got to be here. I got to be there. I just don't have time to do one more thing in my life. It's hard. I hardly have time to breathe sometimes. Here's my advice. Start small. You're not going to put an hour of your day towards silence and solitude. You're not going to put 30 minutes of your day towards silence and solitude. You might build up to that one day, but right now, I would say start small. Set your sights really low, really, really low. Try 5 minutes. Try 10 minutes. Don't worry about trying to spend an hour in doing this. And let me tell you, I'll be honest, I've evolved in this. I remember when I was first tried to do it, when I was telling you before with the clock, I remember sitting there thinking, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it for 30 minutes. I'm going to sit here for 30 minutes and be quiet. 30 minutes is an eternity. When you're just quiet like that, it's hard. And I'm a therapist, so there's something, I'll give you, pull this back and tell the secrets here. There's something called therapeutic silence. Y'all ever heard that term? It's when you ask a question to somebody and you just sit there till they answer. And boy, that 1 minute it feels like an hour when you're just there by yourself. And sometimes this can feel that way. You're sitting there and you're thinking, I'm going to spend all this time. Don't worry about that. Set 5 minutes, 10 minutes. The point is taking that time, whatever time you have, and spend it and opening yourself up to the Lord and saying, God, speak to me. Talk to me. Minister me. And spend time talking with him and spending that time together. Each day, I've heard some authors in their books talk about something called crumbs of wasted moments. Crumbs of wasted moments. That's just a moment of silence. I'm driving to work. Maybe before I get up in the morning, I've got 5 minutes before I wake up early. Or I'm driving on my way to work. Let me tell you, that worked for me. I do a lot of driving. And usually, it used to be when I get in my car, first thing I do is turn on the radio. Or that's when I usually would call. I'm over a bunch of centers. I would call my centers. I'd call the directors. And that was my phone time. I'm working the phones the whole time. But I've learned, let's just put that down and spend some time while I'm driving, just being quiet. And asking God just to honor that time. Let me tell you, if you'll take whatever time you've got in whatever moment you've got, it might be while you're at lunch, while you're stuck in traffic, while you're before you go to bed at night and you're just laying there. Take those moments, those minutes, and just ask God to redeem them. Let me tell you, he'll honor that. And he'll start using that to renew that in your life, and he'll actually make you hungrier for that. And it'll grow in your life to let him just to fill you. So don't underestimate the power of those crumbs. So number one is to start small. Number 2 is find a place where there are no interruptions. Find a place. That might be at home. Like I said before, it might be in your car. It might be someplace in your, like a park. If you go walking in the morning, it could be at the gym. Put on some headphones. Don't turn the music on. Just sit there on the treadmill and walk and talk to the Lord. In fact, you can be silent and still do a task. A lot of times, you see, this is where I kind of messed up the first time. I thought I had to just sit there on the sofa and be quiet. That's not the case. You can walk. You can mow the grass. That's where I do a lot of mine. I mow a lot of grass. My mom's yard, our yard. And so I'll put my headphones on, and either if I'm not listening to my Bible or I'm trying to catch up some of my daily audio Bible, I'm trying to catch up with that. But when that's done, I used to have music blasting, but now I just turn it off. Still keep the headphones on and just be silent and spend that time asking the Lord to talk to me, to minister. What do you do that you're just mindlessly doing it during the day? Maybe doing dishes, vacuuming, driving, whatever the case might be. Redeem that time. That's time that you can just be silent, turn off the noise, turn off the things that distract you, and let the Lord minister to you in those ways. Number 3, turn off your gadgets. That is hard. What's the first thing you do in the morning usually when you get up? You check your phone, right? What's the last thing you do at night before you go to bed? Check your phone, and then you go to bed. Social media has just turned the tide on some of this stuff. It has just sucks away our time. Just that mindless going through, just trolling down through there. I let me tell you, I'm guilty. In fact, I try not to look at my phone during the day. I will try to put it to the side. Social media, I try not to look at it during the day. I'll do emails and stuff for work, but I just won't mess with it. But what I got in the habit of doing was doing it at night. When we'd go to bed, Nancy'd go to sleep, and I'd pick my phone up, and I'd start looking at Facebook and things like that, just kind of scrolling through, to the point where I would fall asleep while I was doing it. Anybody ever done that, fallen asleep? Has anybody besides me ever had the phone hit you in the face? Yeah, and I did it so much that even today, when I start looking at social media, I start getting sleepy because I paired it with going to sleep at night. So it can just so suck the time out of your life where you could be using it in other productive ways. It's not bad necessarily, but it's not. Social media is not necessarily a bad thing. It can be positive for some things, but it also can be a very negative thing if we let it. We have to control that. So turn off those gadgets, put it to the side, and redeem that time. Those crumbles of wasted time. Those crumbs of wasted time. Use it for the Lord. Number 4 is try to establish a routine. It takes 21 days to make a habit. Try to establish a routine. If doing this is daily, it seems overwhelming at first, then start off small. Once a week, spend some time just by yourself. Intentionally turn off the radio, turn off your phone, and spend some time just asking God to speak to you. Spend that time with Him. Work your way maybe to every other day, then to daily. But build that routine in your life, and you don't have to have it all at one time. Start small. Make it something you can do. Spending that time with the Lord is critical to your spiritual life. Let me give you one caution, though. Don't always expect that every time you're going to sit down with God and spend that time that you're going to have an epiphany or an earth-shattering moment like Elijah where there's lightning and wind. Sometimes it's just, you just get that renewal from God. There's no earth-shattering revelations or intensity. A lot of times it's just that there's that renewal that happens emotionally and spiritually and mentally that happens as part of that routine in your life. These spiritual disciplines bring renewal just by taking that time alone with God. So the 5th thing, and the last one, is this. This is a hard one. Start. That's not an acronym for anything. You just got to start. Now, we could all, because all of us are nice people, and I sit out there where you sit, you can look at me today, and you can shake your heads, and you can take your notes, and you can say, that's all great on paper, but unless you start, when you walk out those doors, it never will become a habit, never will become part of your life. There are lots of ways that we can practice silence and solitude, but we have to start at some point. To say I'll do it later never works. I'll do it later on. Later never comes. Becca and Jordan's little son, Caden, he is famous for saying this. When we try to give him food that he doesn't want to eat, or he try to get him to do something he doesn't want to do, he doesn't say no. His response is, I'll do it when I get bigger. Which is the same as saying no, right? I'll do it when I get bigger. There's a scene in Rocky 3. Anybody remember the Rocky movies? Yeah, so Rocky 3 is the one where he fights Clubber Lang and gets beaten. Remember that? I pitied the fool. You remember that? Okay, that's Clubber Lang. So he gets beaten by him, and Apollo Creed takes him on as his student, as his disciple. So he brings him out to the West Coast, and he's trying to get him motivated to have a rematch with Clubber Lang. And he's trying to get him to run. He's trying to get him to exercise, and his heart just isn't in it at that point. And so there's one scene where he runs on the beach. They're racing each other down the beach, and he gets so far, and he just kind of stops running. Rocky stops running, and he says to Apollo Creed, he says, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do better tomorrow. And anybody remember besides me? I'm a nerd. What Apollo Creed says to him? There is no tomorrow. That's right. And I quote that all the time when me and Nancy are talking. There is no tomorrow. He gets in his face and says it and just yells at him. There is no tomorrow. It's today. We don't have tomorrow. We're not promised tomorrow. We start today. So as we wrap it up, I just challenge you. Let's get this practice of silence, solitude, prayer, resting, the Sabbath, the ones we're coming ahead of it. Let's cement that into our lives. Let's put that practice into our lives today. Maybe you could do it today when you're driving home. If you've got the chance and you're alone, and I told the first service, Dean talked about Sabbath. You get a twofer today, Sabbath and silence on your way home. Just take that time and use it to spend time with the Lord and see what he does with it. See if he doesn't honor it to renew you and strengthen you.